When it comes to inversion compared to eversion, in inversion, there are more folds on the inner side. There are more folds here, while the outer side is stretched. You need to look here. There will also be more folds in this area. This part is stretched. Because this image is an animation, it doesn't show these folds. In a real photo, you would see folds here and the outer side would be stretched. The inner side is shortened, so you can think of it as the ligaments on the outer side always being stretched, which makes it easy to sprain your ankle. In other words, habitual ankle sprains. There are two key things you need to focus on. First, your brain needs to know where your foot is. If your brain doesn't know where your foot is, no matter how well you train your calcaneus to be aligned, it won't help because your brain doesn't know its position. That's the first and most important prerequisite. The second prerequisite is that your brain, if it knows where your foot is. At this point, you must make sure that the support from your heel is centered, not on the outside. As long as the support is on the outside, the ligaments on the outer side are prone to injury. So that's why ligaments are ranked second and muscles come third. Which muscles? Your peroneal muscles, your posterior tibial muscle, those are the ones. If you don't understand these, you won't be able to fix habitual ankle sprains. That's the relationship between them. I explained this back in March, but since there are a lot of new CN viewers this time, you need to get familiar with it again. My foot model, really, this is the right foot. This is the right foot. Can you see it? This is what we call calcaneal eversion. So what happens during calcaneal eversion? It will also move backward. So at this point, the foot becomes longer. How much does it move backward? For children, it can move back 5 to 8 millimeters, up to a maximum of 1 centimeter. For adults, it usually moves back 3 to 5 millimeters, typically 3 to 5 millimeters. Now, this is calcaneal inversion. With inversion, the bone moves inward, and as it moves inward, it pushes the talus forward. So if you look from the side, your heel becomes relatively short. So for women, when they wear high heels, the shoes can't stay on. When wearing flat shoes with a shorter heel counter, the shoes just won't stay on, and they keep slipping off while walking. That's why many women end up stepping on the heel counter of their shoes, wearing flat shoes like slippers. A lot of people like to wear them that way. It's not that they like wearing them that way, it's just that when they wear them normally, the shoes won't stay on. This is related to calcaneal valgus and varus. Calcaneal valgus is accompanied by talar internal rotation, and calcaneal varus is accompanied by talar external rotation. Talar internal rotation is often accompanied by internal rotation of the lower leg, while talar external rotation is often accompanied by external rotation of the lower leg. However, if someone has severe varus, at first the lower leg rotates outward along with the calcaneus. But when it rotates outward, the inside of my foot lifts up. When it lifts up, my big toe can't grip the ground, and my arch can't absorb shock anymore. So at this point, the forefoot has to use even more force to press the big toe down, but the angle for forefoot eversion is already very limited. In addition, this function is rarely used in daily life because we mostly walk on flat surfaces. As a result, the vast majority of people, 99%, do not have the ability to compensate with forefoot pronation. So since they can't use this pronation compensation, they can only compensate by letting the knee collapse inward. Once the knee collapses inward, the pressure on the inside of the knee increases, and after this inward collapse, your femur rotates internally. At this point, when you put weight on the inside, your lower leg rotates inward. So when the calcaneus inverts, the rotation of the lower leg goes through two phases. It first starts with external rotation. Then it turns into internal rotation. So this also fits the principle that extremes will reverse. When external rotation reaches its limit, it has to switch to internal rotation because it simply can't rotate outward any further. If it did, the inside would start to flip up. This is also a point that has left countless people working in sports rehabilitation and biomechanics confused. They just can't figure it out, and many people only know part of the story, but not the whole picture. They say, his calcaneus is short, so with this kind of calcaneal inversion, it must be externally rotated. But you don't even need to look. If it were internally rotated, it would be like the tibia was fractured. That's not the case. When he can't use this kind of compensation pattern, he can only switch to another compensation pattern. So this is a more severe form of compensation. That's why, for many children, if you've studied lower limb biomechanics, there's a technical term for it called the tibial torsion angle. What is the tibial torsion angle? It means the top part rotates outward while the bottom part rotates inward, so the whole tibia gets twisted like a rope. That the angle formed between these two is called the tibial torsion angle. But how does this actually come about? When you compensate below, you need to turn inward, but then your calcaneus is in varus, so you have to turn outward. When you try to turn outward, the inside can't rotate over, and when it does, the upper part internally rotates, so you have to turn inward again. As a result, the upper part of the tibia rotates inward, while the lower part rotates outward. Because of this twisting between the two, an angle is formed, which is called the tibial torsion angle. So children can correct this, but adults cannot. In other words, when the bone was originally growing, it was straight, but because the forces from above and below are opposing each other, they end up creating a rotation. This creates a bow-legged shape, and that's also how a vortex forms. I mentioned this in a previous live stream. When ocean currents come from this direction and another comes from here, when the two converge, a vortex is formed. That's also how bow legs develop. So when the tibial torsion angle is too large, your knee joint is more likely to have problems. That's the relationship between them. Now, do you understand habitual ankle sprains? If you encounter someone with habitual ankle sprains, let me tell you, what's the first thing you should do? First, make sure there are no fractures, no torn ligaments, no torn tendons, and that the inflammation inside has already subsided. Only under these circumstances should you proceed to handle it. Never do this. If a sprained ankle is still swollen and the outer ankle bone sticks out, don't think the fibula is out of place and try to adjust it. Adjusting a hairline fracture could snap it completely. I've taught many lessons and worked on many feet, but safety comes first. If someone has just sprained their ankle and it's still very swollen, I absolutely will not touch it. At most, I might spray some medicine on it, but I definitely won't manipulate it. You must go to the hospital first to get an X-ray and an MRI to check if there are any problems with your soft tissue or bones. Only if there are no issues should you consider moving it. That's the first step. The second step is to check the exact position of the calcaneus. In most cases, on the side where habitual ankle sprains occur, unless the brain has no idea where the foot is if the brain is functioning normally, and there is a connection between the brain and the foot, it's usually due to calcaneal inversion. Inversion is usually accompanied by habitual ankle sprains on that side. So in this situation, you need to find a way to get the calcaneus to come out and provide support. After the calcaneus comes out and can provide support, the next step is still not about the muscles. After that, it's about the big toe ball. Because when you sprain your ankle, it's usually a combination of folding and inversion. This is how most sprains happen. The big toe ball can't press down on the inside, which is why the foot can turn over. So, for people with habitual ankle sprains, 50% of the function at the back has degenerated and 40% at the front has also degenerated, so they can't press down on the inside of their foot, making it easy for the foot to turn over. So, at this point, after getting the calcaneus to come out, let them be able to press down on their big toe ball again. Only after ensuring both of these are stable do we start training the peroneus longus and brevis muscles, because when you're about to sprain your ankle, you need to react quickly and pull it back fast to make the foot avert. At this point, it won't work anymore. This is the step-by-step order you have to follow. If you mess up any part of this sequence, you won't be able to improve the situation effectively, especially for someone who not only has habitual ankle sprains but also must keep exercising, like if they're a professional athlete or if they feel uncomfortable when they don't exercise. For these people, you just can't fix the problem. Even if you have them do a lot of triceps surae training or single leg stability exercises, it still won't work. You just can't solve it. When they stand on one leg, they're still putting weight on the ball of their foot. But even then, they're not pressing down with the big toe mount. So people like this, when standing on one leg, love to grip the ground with all 5 toes, love to grab the ground with their toes because their heel can't support them anymore. They can't even press down with a big toe mount, so they try to use their toes to grip the ground to help maintain their balance. So their toes are always trying to grip like this, always trying to grab onto the hard ground like this. There are actually a lot of kids and women who do this. This is the underlying logic behind their behavior.